My boss laughed at my data, so I reported his entire fraud scheme to the feds. Can you imagine spending your entire life trying to be perfect, meticulously coloring inside the lines, striving for every accolade, just to feel like you're constantly invisible? Can you imagine your carefully constructed world, built on hard work and integrity, being systematically dismantled by someone who sees your quiet competence not as an asset, but as a weapon to turn against you? My name is Eleanor. I'm 29, an accountant in a bustling, ruthless financial firm in downtown Chicago, and this is the story of how I almost lost everything to a man who thought he could use me as his unwitting scapegoat, until I turned the tables and made him pay for every single betrayal. The truth is, I've always been the good girl. Not in a saccharine, naive way, but in a quietly competent, reliably excellent way. My parents, bless their hearts, were always performative, especially when it came to my older brother, Mark. Mark was the star of every show, whether it was his mediocre Little League trophies displayed prominently in the living room or his entrepreneurial spirit after dropping out of community college for the third time. My perfect report cards, my scholarships, my consistent achievements, they were met with a polite nod, a faint "that's nice, honey," before the conversation invariably swung back to Mark's latest grand, often doomed venture. I remember being 8, holding up my A-grade math test, my chest puffed with pride, only for my dad to glance at it, pat my head, and immediately pivot to Mark's upcoming soccer game, which he was sure to win. That little clench in my chest, that subtle tightening around my throat, became a familiar companion. It was a constant, low-grade hum of being the overlooked achiever, forever performing for a family more interested in superficial spectacle than genuine substance. It fueled a deep psychological wound, a desperate need for external validation, a yearning to finally be seen and valued for my actual contributions, not just my quiet compliance. That need for validation followed me to Chicago, to the gleaming skyscraper where I landed my first real job right out of college, working for a mid-sized accounting firm. I loved the precision of numbers, the undeniable logic of balance sheets. In a world that often felt messy and emotional, accounting offered a sense of order, a place where accuracy reigned supreme. My meticulous nature, born from a childhood trying to prove my worth, found its perfect home. I worked long hours, buried myself in spreadsheets, and quickly gained a reputation for thoroughness and an almost obsessive attention to detail. I wasn't flashy, didn't glad-hand clients like some of the other young hotshots, but I was good. I knew my stuff, and for a while that felt like enough. I bought a small, cramped studio apartment in Lincoln Park, my tiny sanctuary from the relentless hum of the city and the distant echo of my family's expectations. My boss, Mr. Harrison, was a senior partner, all slicked-back hair and expensive suits, with a laugh that boomed a little too loudly in the open-plan office. He was charming, charismatic, and initially seemed to appreciate my quiet efficiency. He started assigning me to some of the firm's biggest clients, trusting me with complex financial audits and intricate tax preparations. I felt a surge of pride every time he dropped a file on my desk, a small victory against the decades of being overlooked. My chest would swell, a fleeting warmth that momentarily silenced the little voice of self-doubt. Maybe, just maybe, I was finally getting the recognition I craved. Maybe I was finally seen. But then little things started to crop up. Minor discrepancies in expense reports that didn't quite balance. Oddly worded invoices from shell companies I couldn't trace. At first, I dismissed them. New job, complex clients, maybe I was just missing something. My internal monologue was a constant battle. Am I just not experienced enough? Is this normal in high-stakes finance? Don't rock the boat, Eleanor. I'd recheck, double-check, triple-check, my fingers flying across the keyboard, my brow furrowed in concentration. Each time, the numbers still didn't quite add up. My gut instinct, that quiet, insistent hum of unease, grew louder. My stomach would tighten, a cold knot forming, every time I stumbled upon another anomaly. One Tuesday afternoon, Harrison called me into his office. He leaned back in his plush leather chair, a confident smile on his face. "Eleanor, my star accountant," he began, his voice smooth as polished marble. "We need to be a little creative with the numbers on the Sterling account. Just reclassify some of these operational costs as R&D. Helps with the tax breaks, you understand." My breath hitched. Reclassify? These weren't R&D expenses. These were clearly operational costs, some of them borderline personal expenses disguised as company spending. My mouth said, "Of course, Mr. Harrison. but my chest felt tight, a suffocating pressure building. This wasn't creative accounting. This was fiddling the books. My palms started to sweat. I spent the next few days trying to reclassify the numbers, my hands trembling as I typed. Every fiber of my being screamed against it. My professional ethics, the very bedrock of my career, felt like they were crumbling. But the fear of losing my job, of disappointing Harrison, of having my carefully built career fall apart, was stronger. I needed this validation. I needed this job. The thought of going back to my parents, admitting failure, was unbearable. The freeze/fawn trauma response, honed over years of trying to appease my family, kicked in hard. I found myself laughing weakly at his jokes, agreeing to his increasingly dubious requests, even though every internal alarm was blaring. The discrepancies grew bolder, more frequent. Harrison started asking me to optimize client reports, which meant downplaying liabilities and inflating assets. He'd justify it by saying, "Everyone does it, Eleanor. It's the cost of doing business. If we don't, our clients go to a firm that will." He framed it as a test of my loyalty, a rite of passage into the cutthroat world of high finance. I started keeping a shadow ledger, a separate, hidden spreadsheet on my personal laptop at home. It was an almost compulsive act, a way to maintain my own sanity, to cling to the truth amidst the growing web of lies. Each entry was a little knife twist, a fresh confirmation of the deep, systemic fraud being perpetrated. One evening, after Harrison had gone home, I stayed late, pulling up old files, cross-referencing, digging deeper. What I found made my blood run cold. There were multiple shell corporations, all linked through complex transactions, funneling money out of client accounts and into offshore accounts. This wasn't just creative accounting. This was a full-blown, elaborate embezzlement scheme. And I, as the meticulous accountant handling these accounts, was neck-deep in it. He wasn't just asking me to adjust numbers. He was subtly positioning me, the quiet, overlooked achiever who never questioned authority, to be the patsy. The one who would take the fall. My head snapped up, the stark reality hitting me like a physical blow. My future, my career, my carefully constructed life. It was all about to be incinerated. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. I felt a dizzying wave of nausea wash over me. I wanted to scream, to run, to disappear. But there was nowhere to go. I was trapped. The file I held in my trembling hands contained undeniable proof of an illicit transfer, signed with my own digital signature, authorized under Harrison's direction. It was clear as day. I was being set up. This wasn't just a betrayal of my trust. It was a betrayal designed to destroy me. I confronted him, or rather, I tried to. I walked into his office, the folder with my shadow ledger clutched tightly in my hands, my palms clammy. "Mr. Harrison," I started, my voice barely a whisper, "I've found some inconsistencies. These transfers to Pacific Holdings aren't properly documented, and they seem to be routing back to a personal account." He looked up from his computer, a practiced, condescending smile playing on his lips. Eleanor, you're so thorough. But you're just not seeing the bigger picture. Pacific Holdings is a proprietary investment vehicle. Highly sensitive. You don't have clearance for that level of information. Your job is to make the numbers reflect this strategy. He laughed, a low, dismissive sound that sent shivers down my spine. "You're getting ahead of yourself, kid. Go back to your spreadsheets. Leave the high-level strategy to the partners." He had gaslit me. He made me feel stupid, naive, overly zealous. My self-doubt spiraled. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just a paranoid newbie. Emotional flashbacks to my parents dismissing my insights flooded my mind. "You're overthinking it, Eleanor. Mark knows best." My hands started to shake, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I wanted to believe him, wanted to crawl back into the comforting lie, but the gnawing in my gut wouldn't let me. He started assigning me even more special projects, always involving the suspicious accounts, always isolating me from other colleagues who might notice my unease. He'd make veiled comments about how only the most trusted were given these tasks, stroking my ego even as he dug my professional grave. One cold, rainy Tuesday, I stayed late again. The office was mostly empty, the only sounds the distant hum of the servers and the relentless tapping of my keyboard. I was digging through an old email archive, trying to find any communication that might clarify the Pacific Holdings transfers. What I stumbled upon wasn't a clarification, it was a revelation. An email chain between Harrison and a former partner, dated from before I joined the firm. They were discussing a young, bright accountant who had almost exposed a previous, smaller fraud. The partner wrote, "We need someone loyal, diligent, but unquestioning. Someone easy to overlook, who won't rock the boat. Someone like an Eleanor." Harrison's reply was chilling. Found one. Young, ambitious, desperate to please. Perfect for taking the fall if things go south. My jaw dropped. The words swam before my eyes, blurring into an incomprehensible mess. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. It wasn't just about the money. It was personal. He didn't just want to use me. He resented my intelligence, my meticulousness. He saw me as a threat, a reminder of his own academic failures. I later learned he'd failed his CPA multiple times, a deeply guarded secret. He had specifically picked me because I was quiet, easy to overlook, the perfect patsy to frame. He hated that I was a genuine achiever, that my quiet competence was a stark contrast to his performative bravado. My very existence, my quiet pursuit of excellence, fed his deep-seated abandonment issues and jealousy from his own past, turning him into a predator. This was the mid-story twist, the brutal truth of his calculated malice. My entire body went numb, a cold shock spreading through me. I wasn't just a pawn in his game. I was the target. He wanted to ruin me. The shock quickly morphed into a cold, hard anger. My hands, which had been trembling, now clenched into fists. No more self-doubt. No more questioning my gut. He wanted to destroy me? Not if I destroyed him first. That night, I didn't sleep. I meticulously downloaded every file, every email, every shred of evidence, encrypting it all onto a secure external drive. I started living a double life. By day, I was Eleanor, the diligent, slightly overwhelmed accountant, nodding obediently to Harrison's increasingly outrageous requests. By night, I was a digital detective, building an irrefutable case against him. Every email I sent, every report I filed, every conversation I had felt like navigating a minefield. The paranoia was constant, a living, breathing thing at my side. My stomach churned with anxiety, but underneath it, a core of steel was forming. I knew I couldn't confront him directly. That would be suicide. I needed help, but who could I trust? Most of my colleagues were too green or too intimidated by Harrison. I thought of my parents, but quickly dismissed the idea. They would tell me to be reasonable, to not cause trouble. This was my fight. Then I remembered Mr. Davies, a retired senior partner who had been an unofficial mentor during my first few months. He was known for his unimpeachable ethics and his quiet, steely resolve. He lived in the suburbs, a good hour's drive away, but I knew he was my only hope. I called him, my voice tight with forced casualness. "Mr. Davies, I was hoping you might have some time for coffee. I've got a complicated professional query." He agreed, his voice kind but curious. We met at a nondescript diner in Evanston, far from our firm's downtown orbit. Over lukewarm coffee, I laid out everything, the shadow ledger, the emails, the fraudulent transactions, the terrifying realization that I was being set up. As I spoke, my voice cracked, tears welling up, but I pushed through, determined to get every detail out. Mr. Davies listened patiently, his face grave. When I finished, he didn't question my integrity or my sanity. He just looked at me, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low, "this is bigger than you know. This isn't just internal firm policy. This is federal. We need to go to the FBI." The word FBI hit me like a cold wave. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. My hands started trembling uncontrollably. Going to the authorities? That meant blowing up my entire life, risking everything. But Mr. Davies's calm demeanor, his absolute certainty, gave me strength. "You're doing the right thing, Eleanor," he assured me. "You're saving not just yourself, but potentially the careers of others and the reputations of innocent clients." He put me in touch with a former colleague, now an agent in the Chicago field office specializing in financial crimes. The next few weeks were a blur of hushed meetings in discreet locations, of meticulously explaining complex financial transactions to a team of sharp-eyed FBI agents. They were patient, professional, but their questions were relentless. I handed over my encrypted drive, my shadow ledger, my personal notes. I had to wear a wire to work, recording conversations with Harrison, feigning ignorance while feeding him just enough information to confirm their suspicions. Every word I spoke, every interaction, felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. My skin crawled with the constant fear of being discovered. My sleep was haunted by nightmares of Harrison's booming laugh, of being dragged away in handcuffs, of my parents' disappointed faces. My stomach was in a perpetual knot, a dull ache that never quite subsided. The weight of secrecy was suffocating. One particularly harrowing day, Harrison called me into his office. He handed me a stack of papers, demanding I sign them. "These are just some standard indemnification clauses, Eleanor," he said, his smile a little too wide. "Boilerplate stuff. Protects you as the lead accountant on these projects." My eyes scanned the documents, my heart pounding. It wasn't boilerplate. It was a document designed to shift full legal responsibility for all the previous creative accounting onto me. He was practically handing me the noose. My hand hovered over the pen, my body screaming in protest. My throat tightened, my mouth dry. I managed a weak smile. "Of course, Mr. Harrison. Just need a moment to review the legalese. You know me, always thorough." I bought myself precious hours, enough time to scan the documents, email them to the FBI agent, and get confirmation that, under no circumstances, was I to sign them. The tension was almost unbearable. The quiet takedown happened on a Thursday morning, just as the trading floor was buzzing to life. I was at my desk, meticulously finalizing a report Harrison had demanded, my wire feeling heavy against my skin. Suddenly, the office doors swung open and two stern-faced men in dark suits, flanked by a uniformed FBI officer, walked directly towards Harrison's office. The noise in the office died down to an eerie hush. Everyone was staring. Harrison emerged, looking bewildered, his face draining of color as they showed him badges. His booming laugh was gone, replaced by a stunned silence. They spoke in low tones for a few moments, then the agents began to escort him out, one on each side. As they passed my desk, Harrison's eyes, filled with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror, met mine. In that split second, I didn't flinch. I didn't smile. I didn't feel triumphant. I just held his gaze, a quiet, unwavering stare that communicated everything. He saw the recognition in my eyes, the cold, hard truth that I, the overlooked Eleanor, the ambitious but desperate to please Patsy, was the one who had brought him down. His face crumpled, a mask of bravado shattering into raw disbelief and utter defeat. It was a brutal emotional checkmate, not a shouted triumph, but a quiet, profound victory etched in the silence of his eyes. He didn't say a word as they led him away, his expensive suit looking suddenly cheap, his once confident shoulders slumped. The silence in the office was deafening, broken only by the click of the elevator doors. My breath, which I hadn't realized I was holding, finally escaped in a shaky gasp. The tension, which had been a suffocating blanket for months, slowly began to lift. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The firm was in chaos. Internal investigations, news reports, frantic client calls. I spent days, weeks, going over everything with the firm's legal team and the FBI. Initially, some colleagues looked at me with suspicion, then with dawning awe, and finally with respect. The firm, desperate to control the damage, offered me an immediate promotion, a significant raise, and full reimbursement for any legal expenses or lost income during the covert operation. They made it clear I was a hero, a whistleblower who had saved them from an even bigger scandal. My parents eventually found out, not from me, but from a news report that vaguely mentioned an anonymous, meticulous accountant. They called, their voices hushed, almost reverent. "Eleanor," my mother whispered, "we had no idea. We're so proud of you." My father, usually so quick to dismiss my achievements, simply said, "You did good, kid. Real good." It wasn't a grand cinematic validation, but in their quiet acknowledgement, I finally felt seen. Not as Mark's sister, or the good girl, but as Eleanor, a person of integrity and immense courage. It didn't heal all the old wounds overnight, but it was a crucial step, a subtle shift in the family dynamic that had always overshadowed me. The firm tried to keep me, but after a few months, I knew I needed a fresh start. The ghosts of Harrison's fraud were still too present. I accepted a senior position at a smaller, ethically focused financial consultancy in a different part of the city. I also started therapy, processing the trauma, the paranoia, the betrayal, and confronting that deep psychological wound of being the overlooked achiever. My meticulous nature, once a coping mechanism, was now a celebrated strength. I learned to trust my instincts, to set firm boundaries, and to understand that my worth wasn't dependent on external validation from performative family members or manipulative bosses. It's been almost a year since Harrison was sentenced, and I've never looked back. The money I recovered, plus my new salary, meant I could finally buy a small condo overlooking Lake Michigan. It's not just a place to live. It's a testament to my resilience, my vindication. The The constant knot in my stomach is gone. The tightness in my chest is eased. I still check my bank accounts with diligence, but now it's out of a place of empowered control, not fear. I've come so far from the young woman who quietly accepted being overlooked, who sacrificed her peace for the fleeting approval of others. I reclaimed my voice, my integrity, and my inherent value. The psychological wound of needing to earn love and validation has finally healed, replaced by a quiet, unwavering self-worth. I know who I am, what I stand for, and that I am enough, exactly as I am. This journey taught me that true strength isn't about avoiding conflict or constantly striving for external praise, but about fiercely protecting your truth and standing up for what's right, even when it's terrifying. It's about being seen not just by others, but by yourself, for who you truly are. Have you ever felt caught in a situation where your integrity was compromised, and you had to choose between your career or your principles? How did you navigate it? Share your story in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please consider subscribing. Your support helps me share these raw, honest truths, and it means the world to know I'm not alone in fighting for what's right.